Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. I am your host, Michael Dixon. We have a doozy of a movie to unpack tonight. With me, as always, Ryan King. What's up, Ryan?
Yeah, trying to think up what game I would play against death. I think everybody goes for like something that they think they're good at, but death probably is too. Maybe just a coin flip.
That's probably your best
leave
odds,
it up.
Honestly. Yeah. Connect 4. Something very simple.
We'll play tic-tac-toe, and it'll always end in a tie, right? Isn't that
yeah, as long as it's tie, I get to stay alive.
We get to keep going.
And John Garcia.
Yeah, what is it like the ultimate or the modern or contemporary stalling with death to like ask if he wants to get high and eat Doritos and play like Burnout Revenge?
Oh, that's a good
NFL
idea.
NFL Blitz? Dixon,
Yeah.
I feel like you could take him.
Yeah. That's a good point. I could definitely beat death at NFL Blitz. Although death would make the game would make me fumble and death would end up winning. And
Oh yeah,
that's
of course.
how it works.
He would make you play the Cleveland Browns, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Anyway, if you can tell from our banter here, we are talking about 1957's The Seventh Seal.
Slutar du aldrig att fråga? Nej. Jag slutar aldrig.
Written and directed by Ingmar Bergman. This was kind of his big breakout film onto the international scene. He had been working in theater a long time in Sweden and started making movies in the late 40s. Didn't really have success for the first decade or so of his career until finally he had a breakout film in 1955 called Smiles of a Summer Night that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. And he found out about it when he opened the newspaper one morning and it said, Swedish film wins Palme d'Or. And he's like, oh, cool, I wonder who that was. And it was his own movie. Did not know had been submitted to the competition. He had been trying to make The Seventh Seal for a long time, and finally, when he won the Palme d'Or, the studio allowed him to make it. The Seventh Seal is, like, it's hard to overstate its impact on world cinema and the, indelible mark it has left on popular culture around the world. It stars Max von Sydow as Antonius Block, a knight in the 14th century who is returning to Sweden from the Crusades along with his squire, played by Gunnar Bjornstrand, named Jans. And they wake up on a rocky beach, and they're kind of getting ready to start their day, and all of a sudden, the knight looks up, and he sees death staring at him in the face. And he says, I'm here to take you, and the knight says, hey, what if I beat you at chess? Can you leave me alone? And so that's kind of the introduction of the movie, and the story kind of flows in and out of that dynamic as it goes along, kind of returning to the chess game. And Death will have to leave periodically to go harvest souls, I assume, and then return to continue his chess game. And there are other events that happen along the way. There is a married couple that is in an acting troupe, and they have a 1-year-old child, and they are, kind of just living their life and not worried about any sort of existential dread. And meanwhile, the knight is just terrified by the prospect of death and determined to figure out like the meaning of life, essentially. Like, he's like, I need proof that God exists, that the devil exists. Like, I need to figure this out. He's like, I'm not forestalling death because I don't want to die. I'm forestalling death because I need to know. I need knowledge. I need to figure things out before I leave this earth. And it's really this fascinating existential analysis of faith and doubt and Christianity, and in a very like blunt, upfront manner, which I think is really interesting. Like having death as an actual character in the film and having to deal with it in such a direct way. Bergman grew up in a very religious family. His father was a pastor, and he was, raised as a very ardent Christian, and left the church as an adult and left Christianity. And this movie was kind of his first foray into exploring those ideas of doubt and faith. And he would go on to do that many times throughout his career. But yeah, I think The Seventh Seal is a fascinating film. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it. We'll get into more of the details. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on The Seventh Seal? You had not seen this before, correct?
I had not seen this before, I think because it looked like a movie that you have to be in the right mindset to vibe with, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'd just never been in a spot where I'm like, yeah, let me sit down and watch this over something else. But I had intended to eventually get around to it, so it's good to have an excuse. It's interesting in that it's surreal. It's more like dreamlike than necessarily surreal, because I feel like that word gets used differently, but it has a real like dreamlike quantity to it. I would definitely say things are painted with very broad strokes. Like it's very on the nose what it's talking about. Almost in a good way, because I think then the sort of pacing and the dialogue gives you a little bit more time to sit with everything and kind of, I guess, like reflect on it the same way the characters are, giving you, these kind of different viewpoints. I feel like I would gel with it a little bit more on another view. Just kind of now knowing like, okay, each of the characters, what are they representing, or what's kind of the stance they're taking? I could then kind of go back and like follow that through line a little bit better, because I think I was still sort of like figuring it out partway through. It's also tricky to go back and watch something like this when it's been spoofed or referenced or kind of done again, right? So many times.
Thousands of times.
Yeah. You kind of go back and you're like, okay, I get it. I always like stories of kind of the like wrestling with death or bargaining with death. Especially ones that have like a different interpretation on it. So it's interesting to see kind of like where this goes. And the reason is very different, I think, from most stories. I would say that was probably the most intriguing thing to me, because I think most of the time the story is more of like, oh, I just don't want to die, which in a way this character is going through that of like not wanting to die, but not out of like, oh, I want to keep living or anything. More of this just complete unknown, and the like fighting, I guess, more with the unknown than fighting with like losing their life and losing opportunity or anything like that. And then, yeah, I guess just like the sort of like religious question of like faith and proof that he tackles with is definitely interesting to think about. This is sort of flow in a conversation we had before about like or what this movie would be to someone who isn't religious or doesn't have a religious background. I would kind of wonder again, like what they would get from it. I think because it's focused a little bit more on death than necessarily God. Like that's that's the question that he's asking, but it really is kind of just about this like death and unknowing afterwards. That it probably still works or still kind of vibes.
Yeah. John, what were your thoughts?
Well, I really do agree. I agree with Ryan. Dreamlike is the word that best describes this. Fever dreamlike, or like nightmare in some instances, when you're seeing like a lot of the images, the marching crowds, the people like flogging themselves and trying to reason and grapple with like the brutality of life. I feel like Bergman captures so much of that meditation perfectly in his characters talking. I think I was telling you, Dixon, before we recorded, that it did feel like watching Bergman have a conversation with himself in so many different ways, almost like being told a fable, like a really dark fable.
Yeah.
You have all these characters who clearly represent different like life paths and people within this context that it wants to explore. Each character can be used to explore this in a different way. And Antonius is obviously probably the most interesting character to me, because he is somebody who, as he's stalling to try to figure out what's out there, it's pretty clear that it's because of, like Jans makes it clear, like it's because of all of the dark shit that they've had to do as part of the crusade. And this whole like essentially being part of something for so long that has ruined your perspective on like how beautiful life could potentially be. You just see like so much death and everything else that now there's like a desperate hope that there's something more that needs to be found before you die. And I feel like that was such a gripping drive for the movie for me. Ryan, going into this movie in the right mindset it was very difficult for me because I just finished watching Best in Show. Right.
That's some fucking whiplash, man.
Real whiplash. I told Dixon, I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to get to watch this movie like Monday night. I'm going to hang out with Sasha and we watch a Best in Show, and Sasha went to bed and I was like, I got time. I guess I can do this. And the whole time I was like, damn it. This is like the wrong way to do a double feature.
There is some good comedy in The Seventh Seal, but it's not necessarily what you leave the movie thinking about or what you go in expecting.
Yeah. There's like little bits and goofy, like slapstick almost and circumstantial stuff too. Yeah. It's like, I appreciated that being in there and it not being a downer. Like I could see a lot of people being influenced by this film and it leading to like a slog of like student films that are all in black and white and they're all like way too serious and they like people looking really moody and that kind of thing. But it felt like Bergman was having a good time exploring the concepts and was able to inject, some humor and some levity and hope into it. And I really liked all of those things. I also just like Death as a character in this. That's pretty rad. Whenever Death shows up, I was like, oh shit. Like it's almost like a plot twist or a character twist at different times to be like, surprise, it was me. And like, like oh shit. You get that same surprise that Antonius has. So I really did like the way that this flowed. And I feel like I would benefit from a second viewing.
I watched it twice this week and I felt like I benefited from a second viewing this week, even though I had seen it before. Like I think I appreciated the dialogue a lot more on a second viewing and some of the witty banter back and forth. I like, especially Jans's dialogue is so good. And the bits about where like the blacksmith is freaking out because his wife left him and the guy's Jans is like, love is nothing but lust and more lust and cheating and heartbreak. And like, your woman is gone. You should be happy now. Like stop being like, get out of the ditch, put a smile on your face. You've been freed.
Yeah, Jans is like Nick Cage and Pig, but way more aggressive.
So I'm excited to get more into all of these things that you guys just mentioned, but I want to start kind of in this opening scene. I think it's just one of the most iconic scenes in the history of cinema, with Antonius and Jans on the beach and Death appearing as Antonius is packing up his things and kind of getting ready to move on for the day. And I think it's an interesting place to start the film because you don't necessarily know exactly where these guys are on their journey back from the Crusades, but they're coming back from untold horrors in the Middle East, having to slaughter people for religious causes, and then are coming back into a Black Plague riddled society. And they're just going from, out of the frying pan and into the fire, trying to dodge death left and right. And then he comes upon them at a very unexpected moment. They're not like hanging out with sick people. They're not at a battlefield. They're just like kind of woke up and they're ready to go about their day. And it just kind of pounces out of nowhere, which I think is an interesting way to frame it. But that scene is so iconic on the rocky beach, and the vision of Max von Sydow sitting across from Death and beginning the chess game with him. Anything you guys took away from that opening sequence that, as obviously it's something that has been parodied so many times, but I think it's still very powerful to see it.
Well, I mean, it establishes pretty strongly the visual language Bergman uses. The composition of the shots throughout the movie have this great depth in the way that they're layered. Mm-hmm. And even on the beach where you could, have wide open, or you could just choose to do tight up close kind of shots of them playing chess, there are still some moments where they show you like how large the land is, to show you that like Death has to kind of make this approach in a quiet terrain. Like there really is nothing around. I think that it just kind of emphasizes Death kind of comes for you anywhere. Death can be anywhere. I would think that like a movie in modern times, I also was like, this is, the first Final Destination film where Death is trying to stalk you. But like in any movie in like contemporary time, if you were to try to throw Death into it, they have to do something more bombastic, or like there really is a near death experience that gets you close to talk with Death. But in this instance, all I could kind of think about was like, Death really just strolls up and goes, I'm going to take your life. Like it just is happening.
It's very nonchalant.
So striking that it happens. And I think that's where like it really did, even from the start, it just felt like I was watching a fable. Like I could hear somebody telling me, it felt like Bergman was making up this legend of, of Antonius Block, like who had talked with death. He had walked with death. And like, I could see the poetry of it. Mm-hmm. So that was what I kept thinking about when I watched that opening sequence. I was also just like locked in on the chess game immediately. I was like,
yeah,
those are huge pieces too.
Massive chess pieces. Very ornate too.
Yeah, I kind of was like, I would figure that maybe they were carved a certain way that would resemble characters or something. I didn't look too close. I don't know, but
yeah, it's definitely it's presenting that they're like laying on that beach. I think doesn't he like drink some water or whatever? There's a very like relaxed and almost like tired sense to them. To then it's like death just sort of pops up and you get the impression of like, oh, they've been on all these battlefields and seeing all these horrors, right? And then it's finally like, we're done. And then it's like, oh, now death is here, right? To just like walk up and so not where you would expect it to show up. And I do like that this, again, like this death has been copied, obviously, or kind of played off in sense. But I would think that probably before this, you really, and even now would still see like the skeleton or a scythe or like something more to like really, really drive home the like gruesomeness or whatever of death. And it's more like he's a dude in a robe. Like his face looks pale, but it's not impossibly pale or skeletal or anything. He does just look off-putting in a dark robe, but it's also just like he's just there, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's an interesting interpretation of death, and plus how he keeps sort of like popping back up, I guess, to sort of fuck with him bit by bit.
Yeah. And the film opens with a reading of a verse from the book of Revelation that talks about the seventh seal being opened, and then there being a half hour of silence in the heavens after the seventh seal is opened. And I think that's an interesting way to start it off. Like, I actually reread the entire book of Revelation the other night because I was like wanting to like see like what specific significance the seventh seal had, and it really is just like there's a scroll that has 7 seals on it that have to be opened, and each of the first 6 are opened and horrible things happen, but then the 7th seal is like shit just goes fucking wild. It's like there are so many subcategories within the 7th seal, like, and this thing happened and a third of the earth died, and then this thing, and like there's just all these horrible things. And so it's like once it's opened, there's this kind of calm before the storm, and then the apocalypse comes. And so I think it's like the movie is kind of the silence before the apocalypse of Antonio Block's passing, right? And he's forestalling it. And the movie has a lot of silence to it. Like Bergman didn't use a lot of music in his films. He was quoted as saying that he thinks films have their own rhythm like music, and that adding music to them kind of takes away from the rhythm that the film has. And so there is some music in here that is very well placed and does a great job of creating tone, especially like right at the start of the movie. There's like very severe like music to kind of get you going and on tone. But I think it's interesting. There is a lot of silence in this movie, and it's kind of like waiting for the impending doom to come and for death to finally win, because of course he inevitably will.
Yeah, and I think we see a lot of like silence, not just in the way the movie lets things sit between dialogue, but also that theme repeats. One obvious in a mute character, but this silence back from God that Antonius contends with, of like, right, why does he let these things happen? Why doesn't he answer prayers? Like, that does seem to be a theme of throughout this.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so there's an interesting juxtaposition in this movie between these different characters and how they deal with this question of God and the supernatural. And and Antonius Block is dealing with it in a very depressive fashion, like super fixated on what are these big questions surrounding life and existence. And then you have Jans, the squire, who is basically a nihilist, like doesn't really care about anything. And it's like he is able to find joy in life through just kind of lighthearted humor and like not taking anything seriously. And then you cut away from them to this acting troupe and this husband and wife who have this, 1-year-old child, and they're so happy just to be together and to have this family. And the husband of the family sees supernatural visions, and something that Antonius Block is like desperate to see but cannot. And the actor is able to see them, and he has a very happy outlook on life because of it, maybe, or maybe because he has a happy outlook on life, he sees God in everything. Like he just attributes things to supernatural forces because he likes his life and things are going well for him. And then his wife has the same happy disposition, but kind of doesn't really care about spiritual things because she's happy and her life is good. And so there's like an interesting contrast between these four characters. And like, you could argue that all of them have healthy dispositions generally, except for Antonius Block, because he's over fixating on this. But, I wrote down about the four lead characters. It said the actor finds meaning in life and thus sees God. The actress finds meaning in life and thus has no need for God. The knight finds no meaning in life and thus desperately needs God but can't see him. The squire finds no meaning in life and thus finds no meaning in God. He must find what pleasure he can through humor. So it's like, kind of different ways of approaching this existential question. You see that play out in these characters as the movie goes on. And I think the movie, and Bergman is sympathetic to Block and what he's going through, but I think he kind of lands on like, this isn't like really a healthy way to like live and approach this. And as somebody who has had a crisis of faith and dealing with those types of things, it's like, it feels like you're doing something really important, right? When you are really dwelling on these things and trying to find the greater meaning in life and what that means. But like at the end of the day, you're just kind of missing out on the joys that you can find around you. And I think that's kind of one of the major points of the film is that like, hey, you can explore these ideas and that's cool, but like, you've got to be able to focus on other things in your life and to find joy and solace in something else.
Yeah, because I mean, it builds into Antonius's arc. His whole character initial drive is, I went through all this horrible shit and I need to figure out what meaning, if any, there is. But he's kind of doing it out of this like this rushed sense that he needs to figure it out for himself in a way that would bring, I don't know how, it's one of those things where he never really stops to ask like, and then what? Like, what does it get me when I find out what the meaning is, if there is a God or not? And death taunts him at every turn, but he's also like enjoying the chess game with death too. Like he's taunting death back at times and sort of he starts to have these moments where he's self-actualizing into like, what am I doing? What am I really trying to get? In a way that builds toward his his meeting with the acting troupe as well, to where he really kind of realizes he locks in. And I feel like it's one of those things where he's so disconnected too from humanity. Like him and Jans, it probably doesn't help to have a dude that's always just nihilistic on your side and not really meet anybody else. And like they come across that after they see death, they are riding in that field and they come across the body that Antonius is like, go talk to this person and see what they have. And like Jans moves the body and it's like rotted out like flesh, and like Black Plague riddled corpse that's just like sitting in a robe. And Jans just kind of like nonchalantly returns and is like, it said a whole lot, even though, it was really eloquent actually what it told me, even though it didn't tell me, something. I can't remember the full quote, but it's like a beautifully way that he worded it.
Antonius is like, what, did he tell you where we're, they're trying to get directions or something. He's like, what did he say? And he's like, he didn't really say much, but what he did was very eloquent. He's quite well spoken actually. It's like, well, he's telling you that death is not far, that disease is everywhere and you're kind of fucked. So I feel like that's what's been consuming Antonius. Is like he's seen so much battle and war, and his only kind of companion is somebody who is like, everything sucks and there is no God. So like, it makes sense that he would be very internally focused on something that would bring him out of that situation. And he's looking for a sign, like anything that could tell him. And
they stop at a church to try to talk about it and all of that. And it's like, when he finally meets the actor, that's like the sign that he needs. And it's such like a beautiful moment. But that's I really, that character arc for him just makes so much sense from the dark start that we have of him and Death's game.
Yeah. And I think also his crisis of faith is like making him so insular and lonely that he like refuses to interact with Jans, right? And it's like, you would think they would be like best buddies, having gone through the horrible shit that they've gone through, that they would have a pretty tight bond, even if they don't see eye to eye on everything. But like, they seem to despise each other. They hardly speak. And it's like that different approach to the profound questions in life has just put a barrier between them where they only have one other person they can talk to on their journey back from the Crusades, and they aren't taking advantage of that, you know?
Yeah, I feel like they both probably at that point know each other so well that they feel like there's no reason to, especially Antonius, if he's in that crisis, feels there's no reason to ask Jans anything, because Jans would just be like, it's bullshit.
He'll just give a quippy remark and I say it's not worth worrying about.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, you said earlier about him taking pleasure. He doesn't even necessarily seem to take pleasure in it. It just seems to be his like coping mechanism, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's like whatever joy he can find is through humor and vocabulary and you know, kind of like fucking with people. And it's probably not like lasting, you know, joy like the actors have, but it's a way to get through life and not be super depressed all the time.
Yeah. But Jans also isn't like a total piece of shit, as we see later. There's moments where he indicates that he has the capacity to be a total bastard about something.
Yeah, he's not a great guy.
Yeah.
You know, he comes across a random mute woman and says, "You're mine now. Come with me."
Yeah, that's right. Let's just assume that I have a wife, but also that my wife is probably dead
now
and I need a homemaker. Yeah. And then like, I think in that logic too, he's also like, I could have raped you. And I'm like, that's really not the argument you think it is, Jans. Like, that's not.
Yeah.
That's it. What is it he says in Always Sunny? Like, it's about the implication.
Yeah, the implication. Yeah. But yeah, like that's like, he like saves her though, right before he does all of that. He saves her from somebody else who's about to give her like a shakedown and,
from a grave robber.
Yeah. A grave robber that we see like more than once. And every time you see him, you're like, that guy sucks. Like,
and apparently he also convinced Antonius to go to the Crusades, and the squire is very upset about that. He's
Yeah.
He's like, if I see you again, I'm going to cut your fucking face.
I was like, he's like the central point of anger and ire in the whole fucking movie. Yeah. Every time I saw that guy, I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, so I think like as they're kind of getting on their journey and they enter the city and they go to this church, I think there's a really interesting dynamic here that plays out where you have Jans talking to a painter, and Bergman actually got the idea for this film from a Swedish medieval painter who had painted a painting on the ceiling of a church of Death playing chess with a knight, and he got the idea for this film. And so that painter is kind of a stand-in for the actual painter who made that painting. And he talks about how Jans, like, your paintings are kind of a downer, man. Like, why would you do this? Well, who's going to look at these? And he's like, a skull is more interesting than a naked woman, and people are going to look at this and be fascinated by it, like, way more than you would expect, which feels like kind of commentary on the movie itself, like, and the lasting impact that it has had because of its ghastly nature and the questions that it's asking. And, you know, Bergman has made like sex comedies that are great, but, you know, they're not as lasting as The Seventh Seal. And then meanwhile, while they're having that conversation, you have Antonius Block goes to the confessional booth and, you know, talking to a robed individual on the other side of the cage there and confessing all these things about how he's trying to find God and he thinks he's a terrible person. And he's like, you know, why can't I shake this feeling of God off of me? Like, I want to be rid of this, but I can't. And I have to know and figure this stuff out. And it's a really interesting monologue about his crisis of faith. And then he tells the priest that he has been confronted by death and is playing him at chess, and he gives away his chess strategy. And then, it was death all along in the robe. And death is a crafty bastard, and he will cheat to win. So yeah, I feel like it's a scenario where Block thinks he's going to cheat Death, but it's just not. Death is going to cheat him, and he's going to lose, and it's just that's how it's going to go.
And he keeps bluffing too, where he's just like, "Yeah, I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to know what I was going to do, so that I can." But he's clearly like surprised and shocked.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. I was very interested when the painter shows, basically says like, it's much more interesting to show a skull. There's sort of this like sensationalism to it of like, it needs to be striking. It needs to drive you to, believe in something. Like this is what kind of the art is intended for. And it reminded me that I attended like, I got to go see one of my friends who was a professor, adjunct professor at UT, talk about this German artist. And I wish I could remember the name at this point. Hopefully somebody out there rings a bell and they remember it and they tell other people. But he used to paint like exclusively, or at least a lot of his most renowned paintings were of like Christ's suffering. And it was toward like a time of, I think the 1500s, there was like around the time of plague. And it was just this thing, like the whole intention of the painting wasn't to try to scare people because it's Christ. You're not trying to scare somebody by showing them like Christ's suffering, but that he through his art was trying to help people alleviate their suffering, to know that somebody else had suffered with them in some way and had gone through agony. And I was very moved by that lecture and have remembered it clearly since, forgotten the artist's name, but know that it's something that I want to go, I every so often like try to look back up and figure out and relearn.
It's very Catholic.
Yeah. But it is one of those things where I was like, I appreciated that because I'm used to so many people being like, and then they painted the brimstone and all the fire and the hell that they'll go through if they don't, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, at least like as a painter trying to convey this in some way that you have a motivation that isn't just fear mongering that you're trying to, but then seeing this painter do it, I was just reminded and I was like, wow, yeah, this is just a footnote in the journey of Jans and Antonius, but it is something that speaks to like the importance of what art is for. A picture speaks way louder than like the words can. Yeah. And trying to share that and show that in this movie was just a great interaction to see Jans talking with the painter about it. Mm-hmm. They're just shooting the shit too and like getting drunk a little bit, right? I think It's like, oh yeah, good time.
Yeah, I guess we also see our acting troupe, and they're talking about putting on a little play, and they're going to have one of the characters have like a death mask, like a skull mask as well.
The meta. Yeah, they have the meta play of sorts.
Yes.
By the way, what is the play? What is the play about?
I don't know. They also kind of go back and forth between calling themselves actors and acrobats, and it's like they're like juggling and they're wearing kind of clown outfits, but they do seem to be acting to some degree. They're singing. I don't know. It almost seems like a vaudeville show or something.
Yeah, and I have a really hard time believing that one dude can get laid dressed as a chicken man, looking at a woman and making a face with the eyebrows. I don't think that's how that works.
He was a healthy man without the plague.
That's true. That's true.
He's got a lot going for him.
He wasn't the oafish blacksmith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, well, and I guess that they put on the little play, and then when that guy leaves, their leader, he's like, well, I guess we have to go back to being acrobats. Like, I was like, oh, if it's 3, we can do a play, but only 2 people, I guess we just have to juggle. I don't
know. You can just put up a stand and do puppets instead. You can make it. You got 4 hands. You can do anything.
I like how the actor is so, confident in his son, and he's like, he's going to grow up to be the best acrobat ever. He's going to do the one trick we've never been able to do. And his wife's like, what's that? And he goes, suspending a ball in midair. She's like, what? That's not possible. And he's like, for you and me, it's not. But he's going to do it.
He's the one. For somebody who saw the Virgin Mary, that's pretty fucking blasphemous.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah. In that scene, he sees a vision of the Virgin Mary. It's what he says is the Virgin Mary. It's like a woman walking around a child. And I think like there are a lot of people in my life that I would compare to this guy, where it's like everything is a reason that God exists, like, oh, like that thing. How could you not believe in God because of X, Y, Z? Like everything is a sign from God that God is real, or that God is watching over them. Mm-hmm. And if that brings joy into your life and makes you happy and creates an environment for you where you can be successful and live the life you want to live, then, that's fine. And religion can serve a very positive influence in that way if it's, viewed through the right lens.
Yeah, it does start to border on that whole, like, do we have free will thing? Because God said that we should, but you're saying that everything happens for a reason, which means that he preordains it. And then you're in a paradox. And we're not going to deal with that right now. We're not going through that in this podcast. But yeah, I do like the infectious optimism that Yoff has. He's such a charming guy, and it's really funny too. Like, does he really know or not know that his friend went and banged the blacksmith's wife? I was a little bit like, I was kind of sold because he's kind of doofy, that he would just be eating chicken and be like, well, I don't know who that actor is, but he sounds like you probably got to find him. Like, and him being so shocked that everybody's like, you fucking know, you're an actor too. But yeah, that scene too with the Virgin Mary, I like the visions that this dream has to show. They're very quiet and fleeting. They don't really try to tell you that it did or didn't happen. Like, we don't know if Antonius really is seeing, like, having conversations with death, or if it's metaphorical scenes. And Yoff sees death at one point, but it's in a different kind of way that Yoff experiences seeing death than what Antonius does.
Yeah.
And he does see them playing chess, right? He looks over and sees them playing chess. So seemingly he sees the same thing Antonius does.
He sees the metaphor and or the actual, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's some connection to the spiritual that he has, or just a metaphor for him, reasoning that everything is a spiritual cause that is.
It could be a super deep empath who's picked up on the fact that Antonius is
could be.
Going back and forth on whether or not he's going to take his own life or die soon. I don't know. Maybe he knows he has the Black Death or something. But yeah, like, I like that ambiguity that it plays with it, that it has a few characters that can see and those that don't. And some characters see it right before it happens. Like, the fucking chicken man, whatever his name is.
Yeah. He sees he sees death when death comes for him.
Yeah, he does.
Right. I think everyone sees death when death comes for them.
I don't know. I've heard you never hear the one with your name on it. So I
mean, in this movie,
I guess that's true. Yeah. But yeah, everybody in this movie sees death when it comes for him. And it's always interesting to see those character reactions when they're like, what the fuck? Like, I love that chicken dude's response. I don't know what his name is. He's just Chicken Man.
He's like, oh, there's a worker in the forest. What's going on?
Why are they cutting down
death, sawing this one tree down.
Yeah. Another comedic moment.
Yeah.
Where were we before I derailed things? We're talking about Yoff and seeing Virgin Mary and...
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have these two different worlds of the actors and the knight and the squire, and these worlds kind of converge upon each other in the town as the actors go on and put on a performance. What is the performance? I don't know, but they're doing that. The knight and the squire are kind of looking on and hanging out in the town, getting some food, and we have the performance interrupted by this massive group of, like, self-flagellating Christians that come through and are whipping themselves, and they stop the acting production, and one of them starts speaking and talks about, whatever, you're all doomed, like,
he's doing real grandstanding to get bonus points with God.
Yeah,
or some shit.
Like, you got to whip yourself if you want Jesus to love you. And I thought it was interesting comparing that to the actors, because he interrupts the acting performance in order to perform in front of the crowd something different. And I think it's, kind of Bergman's way of saying, like, these guys are full of shit, because, they're, like, interrupting an acting performance just to do more acting and steal the spotlight away from somebody else.
Yeah. Also, the crucifix that they have, that Jesus doesn't look that good. That Jesus is pretty rough. It's very paper
he's got
mache.
real droopy eyes.
They have him in the background the entire time that guy is doing his performance about everybody going to hell. And I thought it was, like, the best shot comp for that, because it's so, it is a facade of Jesus, of the Christ. And it looks so kind of shoddily made. And it's one of those, like, okay, yeah, like, whatever they were doing back then, they clearly, like, maybe didn't have the same cutting edge tools to make Jesus look etched out of stone, and if you're going to carry him across all this way. But to me, it seems intentional that the Christ figure on the crucifix would look as shoddy and kind of, like, second rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the actors just kind of stand awkwardly and wait for him to like finish.
Yeah, I don't know what else they're gonna
Go
do.
back to whipping themselves and each other.
Yeah. But yeah, and so we kind of then have an opportunity for these characters to meet each other, and Antonius decides to go hang out with the actors and their kid, and gets to spend some calm time with them, hanging out in their like covered wagon. And the female actor brings out some wild strawberries and some milk, and they just kind of share some simple food in a nice sunny afternoon, sitting in the grass. And the night is just, it seems like he is experiencing joy for the first time in a long time, where he is finally learning to take pleasure in the simple things in life and just kind of place his awful doubt and the spiritual wrestling that he's going through to the side and just kind of focus on what's in front of him and have a lot better time.
Yeah, he's being done a kindness, and he's being handed strawberries and milk is, sweet and creamy. That's, the finer things that he can really enjoy while they kind of wait for Yof to come back. At the same time, Yof is getting his ass kicked in a bar for something that like the troop leader did and fucking got away with, I guess. It's like just this whole thing, this kind of contrast of, I don't really feel like there's a narrative contrast between those experiences, other than like that is, I guess, the two sides that Antonius has come back to is like the people in the bar are the people that sent people off to the Crusades in a way. There's sort of like this vibe of like quick to violence to solve their problems, a lot of like aggression to really iron things out. They hastily make judgment and pass judgment on people. And then you cut to this very calm field with a patient woman, Mia, who's like sitting there and giving strawberries and cream to him and talking about the finer things and enjoying the finer things being not riches, but just like life and the kid that they have and her husband. And I think Antonius is getting that sweet dose of life from her community that he's just been missing for so long, while Yof is getting like almost a venom shot of the horrible aspects of humanity over where he is.
Even though Yof gets like terrorized or bullied or whatever by all the people at the bar, once he comes back, he's like kind of moves on from it, right?
Yeah.
Like his like positive outlook on everything just sort of takes back over. And I kind of feel like our four central thoughts here, like Antonius is struggling with his faith so much that he's like a downer all the time and like hard on himself. John's has like seen the same like levels of horror and has just decided like none of it means anything, but he's also really like negative then, right, on everything. And then we have like Joe seemingly having everything sort of back up his faith, right? That he sees these visions or imagines the things or whatever, and has this then positive outlook from that, where Mia doesn't see those things or really even seem to care if Joe really is seeing them or not.
Right.
And she's very focused on like the present and everything that's going around her and having an outlook. And like the fact that they're not trying to contend with that is what gives them so much more like there's an ability to be and to move on. And they also do seem to have like somewhat an acceptance of like, yeah, this is what, eventually will die or eventually these things happen or whatever. But right, they're just very much there in the moment.
Yeah, very calm and at peace with where they are. And I think that brings peace to Antonius, which is, the whole scene. And it's like that again reaffirms like Yof would not have started a fight in that bar, nor was he trying to. Everybody else around him was. Like the external unease and anxiety of other people was what really like punished him for something he didn't even do. And I think that sort of speaks to that. Like Bergman shows us throughout the movie a bunch of different humans that are doing terrible things because they want control over something. Like all the people flagellating themselves want control and in a way to redeem themselves with God. They want the plague to be over, and they think that this is the way they can negotiate. They have the dude that gives his whole speech about how everybody's unpleased with you, like God's unpleased with you, and he's trying to do his performance because he thinks it's probably what's necessary to redeem the community. And the blacksmith is acting out aggressions out of jealousy and lust, but he thinks that it will bring justice to him and some kind of peace if he's able to punish the man who stole his wife, which his wife wandered off of her own volition, and he's like blind to that. So there's just all these aspects of like humanity that are pretty dark and are kind of set outside of what our core cast is really dealing with. They're trying to like they're going through the kind of aftermath of all of these other atrocities and trying to find the place to lay their head and to just like rest in it. So it's interesting to see that. But yeah, it's great that you reaffirm it, Ryan, with that. These 4 different perspectives continue to push on this way. This film made me realize that a lot of, and I feel like Bergman's films, like Hour of the Wolf, I was thinking about it while I was watching this. Hard not to, because that was another episode we did. It just made me realize that like a lot of we think about like directors and what they can do with the actors' talents, how they can help the actors can help them. There's a lot of directors in Hollywood that tend to be like, I'm going to get the biggest budget, I'm going to get the best actors, and I'm going to make the best movie. But from everything I've seen from like career directors, from like Scorsese and Bergman, and like people who are not just career directors, but like artists who truly have their own vision, they tend to form a tight-knit troupe of people they trust with their vision.
Yeah.
And they build that. And so like your cast of characters and your cast of actors will not be iconic when you make your first movie or your 8th movie. They will be iconic because of your like filmography and your delivery of your vision with them over time, rather than like, now I'm just going to get like the De Niro's, Pacinos, and everything else once they're at their peak and make the best movie ever. Like the Expendables of art is going to make the best movie. Watching this, I was kind of reminded of that. And I was like, God damn it. Like, yeah, Max von Sydow's fucking great. And like Gunnar Bjornsson, like I've seen a few other Bergman films. I'm like, yeah, this fucking cat. Like he just has friends he gets to make the best art with. And I don't even think Bergman really cared. To your point, Dixon, if he like didn't realize his film won an award until reading a paper, he was satisfied with what he made, and it was great that like he got to do that. And so it was one of those things I thought about as I watched the cast kind of feed off of each other in this movie. It's like, that's fucking awesome. I just love that.
Yeah, and they all had worked together so many times. Like they all know how to act off of each other because they've done that. You know, they've been in a play together. They probably performed 60 times in the winter, and then went into making this movie. Yeah. And Bergman was that way across the board with his cast. Like he had very tight relationships with his cinematographers as well. Like pretty much the first half of his career, he only worked with one cinematographer, and that was Gunnar Fischer, who shot this movie. And then Gunnar Fischer was unavailable for The Virgin Spring or Through Glass Darkly, one of those in the like very early 60s. And he worked with Sven Nykvist on that, and then never worked with Gunnar Fischer again, and only worked with Sven Nykvist for the rest of his career. And, you know, he definitely like really crafts a vision for every film and works very closely with his cinematographer in the way that like Scorsese does, to make sure that his vision is put onto the screen, to where it's almost like co-directed to a degree, because the cinematographer is so involved in every shot to really create this stark, bleak vision that Bergman is trying to build in the film. So, yeah, he does a great job with everybody he works with, and you know, they kind of became a well-oiled machine at this point in his career, and from here on, he was just making hit after hit, you know. So. Yeah,
I feel like the auteur theory does a lot of damage to directors, because some of them feel like they have to do, and it's not that like, you know, Bergman knew that auteur theory was going to be like a whole thing or whatever, but it's just, I think to like modern directors, there's this whole, it has to be my vision, I have to do everything with it. But when you look at like any one of these you know, powerhouse directors who went through 60s, 70s, etc., and made their filmography really strong, like those visions are very collaborative. Like you might have the initial vision, like Scorsese did all these drawings for Raging Bull, but you're going to have people who understand that, and they amplify it, and they want to build that with you. And then you get this, you know, beautiful end product because somebody else really resonated with the story to begin with. And Ryan, you and I know all the stories of people who refuse that, who insist that they're so going to have total control and be the writer, director, actor, star, composer of it. And then you have this colossal, like, you know, rocket ship explosion in the sky. Like, all right, you tried to shoot for the moon and you wanted to go solo and you wanted to teach yourself physics and build the rocket yourself. That's, I guess, what you're going to get. So But yeah, other people, they help you land in the stars. Yeah, just great. Anyways, that's a digression of appreciation.
I think so much of art is finding it as you're working on it, and you have to be more like willing to fluid and work on it. And something like a movie is a group of people making this piece of art, right? And you have to like work with them to get that success. And in some regards, like they have to work with you. There's certainly those actors that, you hear the stories about that they don't really help provide any, and you can kind of tell where that's an issue as well. But yeah, I also think of like Michelangelo would talk about you would find more of what he was carving, like while he was carving it in the piece. Like he didn't necessarily go in being like, I'm going to make this and make it work. And the stone that he carved Michelangelo out of was one that everyone had been like, it's not going to work well. And it had this like hole in it. That's where he ended up putting like the crook of David's arm. Yeah. And so it's like, he just was like, okay, this will work. I'll work around it. Right. And be flexible and get this, eventually get to this vision.
Yeah. I mean, that's how Gladiator won an Academy Award somehow.
I'm not quite following.
Because Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott collaborated on it daily. They said they threw out the script several times and were just like, yeah, fuck it, we'll write it today. And that's how you get the frost. Sometimes it makes the blade stick.
Yeah, definitely some of those lines written by Russell Crowe. Yeah.
Anyways, back on track. We were in the fields having strawberries and cream with Antonius, and
so it's like this brief respite in the film where he gets to have this nice moment and experience some joy in his life. And like he tells Death that he wants to have it, delay his death so that he can do one meaningful thing before he passes. Yes, he wants all this knowledge, but he's like, I want to do one meaningful thing. And he establishes this rapport with the actors and their child, and he makes a friend for the first time in probably decades, I would imagine, as he's been on the Crusades. But it gives you kind of a ray of hope for him as a character and where he might go. And basically at this point we kind of have the whole group join together and start moving onward and kind of it's not really clear where they're going from here. I guess
they do go to they can go to his castle.
Right?
Yeah, they go to Block's house. I guess I'm not sure why the actors are coming along with them, but they kind of all go there. And then notably the actors kind of split off and don't go into the house, and Block and Jans and everybody else go in there, and Jans's mute woman that he has captured, and they meet with Block's wife, and it's this really weird, awkward reunion where it's very unemotional, and his wife is like, you don't like recognize me. I know you've been gone for a while, but it's me, your wife. And he's like, yeah, cool. And there's no joy in this reunion. And it seems like they've just grown so far apart over the years. And Block is just, I would imagine when he left for the Crusades, he was a very fervent believer. And now he is filled with doubt and almost convinced of God's absence. And that is probably creating this wall between them that he is not really able to break. But she also seems very cynical as well. And like she's probably a shell of her former self, as she's had to live without a husband and through the plague all of this time. So it's a very weird husband and wife, Odysseus and Penelope reunion where there's just kind of nothing there.
Yeah.
Doesn't he mention to Mia, like she's asking him about his life or whatever, and he's like, oh, I had a partner, I had a wife, and she's like, where is she? And he's like, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. He was like, does she still love me? I don't know, I have no idea. And then he almost is like surprised that like, oh, you were still at home, okay.
Yeah. I was not expecting to see you here.
He just doesn't know what anything is, whereas Jans assumes my wife's dead, I need a new he's already moved on. Whatever, I need a new stand-in, somebody to clean my castle. Fine. You'll do. You're here. Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of gather together in the house and they all sit down for like a last meal. And then Death walks through the door and he's like, hey, I'm here to take your shit. Like, it's right time to go. Like I beat you at chess. It's time to go. It's funny to me that like there's no climactic checkmate scene. It's just like, it's over, right? And there's...
He does indicate that he is going to mate him, right?
He indicates that it's inevitable, but they don't show it. which is an interesting choice, I think. You don't necessarily know that death is coming for the last time in this scene. In the previous time where they play chess, where Yoff sees them and he's like, oh shit, we got to get out of here. And then he doesn't go with them to Antonius's house. But he's come for his final call to take them all, not just Block, but he's taking everybody in that room. And there's this fascinating scene where just everybody looks at the camera as if they're looking at death, and they're all kind of giving their final plea as to why they shouldn't be taken. And you have some people kind of pleading for their innocence. You have Jans like defiantly being like, I am going to wiggle my fingers and toes and yell and take advantage of my last moments of life. And Block is the only one who's like on his hands and knees praying to God, which I thought was very interesting, because he seems to be so far beyond believing in God, but he's still holding on to that hope that there might be some salvation for him, which of course doesn't come. It's far too late at this point.
Well, his salvation is his redemption, the fact that he helped Yoff, because he did tip Yoff off to the fact that like, you should leave, you should go, before death claims you and your like beautiful family. Just get out of here. That whole sequence.
Yeah, he kind of distracts death while they get out of the way.
Because he knocks over the pieces and goes, oh, I don't know where they are. Death's like, yeah, I remember they were. You can't trick me, you son of a bitch. Like, but he's already tricked him. So it's like, his one of his last acts is a selfless act, which is supposed to be the noble deed of a knight, like an actual redemption for somebody who spent so much time slaughtering people in the name of God. It is,
which is the thing he said he wanted to do, right? Yep. One good thing.
That's what he got. Yeah. Do you think Death knew? Do you think Death knew what he was doing?
I don't know. I think Death's ignorance is a very interesting part of his character, where, the Block asks him, he's like, really, like, there's nothing else? You can't tell me anything about God or Satan or anything? And he's like, I don't know anything, dude. I'm just here to kill you. Like,
I'm just the messenger.
That's it. It's just a force of nature. He doesn't have any secrets. He doesn't know anything about the great beyond. And so I kind of think that Death isn't aware that they're there and they escape. But maybe he is, and he just doesn't care because he's not here for them. He's here for the knight, and kind of whoever happens to be around is bonus points, I guess.
It is in total alignment with how most fables and myths function too, because you have an unimaginable being of power that has some, like in Greek mythology, the gods take human form so that humans can trick the gods. That's kind of what happens here, where Death just has to be somebody that Antonius can outsmart at least once. Even if he can't win the chess game, he might be able to strategize and save somebody else. So it makes sense to me that, like, Death would just be, the guy who paints houses and they fucking don't know like anything else.
It's like, this is a contract, man. I don't know. I'm here for, I get $1 million if I take you in. So.
Antonius, why'd you wear shorts to this meeting? I just don't understand.
I guess he's more of just a force, right? Like, he's just a force to be reckoned with, not necessarily a being or knowledgeable or anything.
He shows up on beaches and
chess.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything magical or mystical other than show up places. Like, Death doesn't, like, there's not like big thunder or like these other things. He even has to get a saw to saw down a tree.
Right. He has to actually physically kill someone with violence, not just like take them away.
God, I want the Death origin story. I want to know more about
There isn't one, John. That's the whole point.
Thank God. People want those prequels, Dixon. They want Sixth Seal.
Oh, God.
There's just those moments where, Death doesn't do anything super magical. He just shows up and does what he's going to do. And I think that makes it more terrifying for him as a character.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, fuck. Like, I have no idea what he could, why or what. And he's so calm and confident about it, too.
Yeah.
I do remember when we meet Antonius's wife that, like, there is such a great, I don't know who that actor is, but she has such a great vacant, but also depressed and sad expression on her face as she talks to him. I just felt like she was looking through me. It just added to the element that she's looking through Antonius too. Like there's nothing there anymore for her.
Yeah. And she looks at death the same way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, are you okay? You're finally here. I've been living in this plague forever. Like, I guess it's finally my time. There's a resignation that she has about everything that's very haunting.
Yeah.
But I do think Bloch's like pleading for his life at the end is very interesting, because like he talks about in his confession to death earlier in the film that he like can't shake God off of him. Like he wants to like be free of this torment, but he can't. And then like he does get his little redemption, but he's still at the end is like just desperate to find God in something, and you know can't ever achieve that. And I think there's like something that's really sad about that, but there's also something that is almost like a Sisyphean nobility of like still trying to find it at the end, even though he knows that it's in all likelihood not going to happen.
It resonates for me with, but this is going to be a sad story, everybody. But when my grandfather passed away, he was 94. He lived a long life.
That's a happy story.
It's a really good. Yeah, he lived a really long, fulfilling life. And he was telling me like up until that last like stretch that he was pretty content with where he was in life. It felt very similar to Antonius's journey. Once he like saves the actors, he has this contentness and he's willing to take people into his castle. No matter what happens, fine. But I do remember I hugged my grandfather in a hospice like a week before he passed, and he whispered, "Pray for Grandpa," so many times in my ear in this way that just was like the fear of death just does that to you.
Yeah.
And I think that like, so when I saw he was doing that, I was just like, oh fuck. And it like hit me, like all of it hit me. I was like, oh fuck, man. Like, no, I don't want to, God. And to think that I was watching Best in Show right before this movie, it's just fucking wild to me that I would have this reaction. But Bergman fucking punched me right in the gut with that.
Yeah, he'll do
interesting. Such a fascinating turn for Antonius at the end. But yeah, so I felt like the humanity of it. I felt that resonance with it, and it is that, you know, he clung to life. He still wanted it, even though he told death he only wanted one thing. He wanted more, and that's what life is, like wanting more constantly. You just want to keep going.
Yeah.
So, oh man.
Yeah. So from here, when death comes to take them, we cut to the actors are out in a field in their horse and buggy, and they have kind of been trying to shelter from a storm. The storm passes. They come out from the wagon, and Mia is just kind of doing her duties, going about her day, taking care of the kid. And Yelf looks out and sees death dragging the everybody who was in that room, those 5 or 6 characters, all like handcuffed, arm in arm, like dancing across the horizon, kind of away from the dawn toward the darkness at the other end of the horizon. And it's this fascinating image that again has been parodied over and over. And it's like you have these kind of 2 indelible images bookending the film, both involving death in different contexts. And it's like you're so far away from them that it's hard to tell if they are kind of being like drug along against their will, or if they are sort of like kind of happily dancing along toward the next realm, whatever that may be. And it's, you know, Yof, again, the only one who can see these spiritual things when they're not directly confronting him. And he seems kind of pleased about it. He's like, oh, hey, I see them all like being, you know, dragged by death toward the horizon. And he has kind of a happy disposition about him as he's saying it. And then Mia's like, oh, Yof, you crazy son of a bitch, get over here. And then they leave. And that's the end of the film. But yeah, what do you guys think about that final scene?
I am inclined to, it's one of those where like, I feel like it's inviting you to ask like, is Yoff right or not? Where do you fall with Yoff's optimism? Especially because I said the movie feels like a lot of Bergman talking to himself. I think it's what he wants to believe. I think it's what Bergman would want, is that like, once you're in death, there is this kind of peace to it. You don't have to ask the questions that Antonius was asking anymore. Past a certain point, it doesn't really matter. because they'll be out of the world of this suffering, of everything that's been around them, and you'll be moved on to something else. Who knows what it could be, but you go and dance with death into another realm. And I'm inclined to say, I want to believe Yof's thing. Like, yeah, they're dancing out there. They're having a great time. They're somewhere else where the blacksmith doesn't have to worry about somebody porking his wife, and the fucking anybody else here doesn't have the same concerns. And maybe Jans is, now that he's moved on, he can be happy. Maybe Jans will be happy in whatever this afterlife is, or maybe there is no happiness in that afterlife. It's just something else, just blackness. Who knows? But yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. Ryan,
it is
what do
like
you think?
ambiguous how they're dancing. If it sort of looks joyful, it sort of looks forced, right? Like, are they kind of holding hands? Are they being dragged along? Like, it's shot at such a far distance that the way I like that it seems very open to interpretation as to what exactly is going on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we only hear like Jof's look at it, which we've just heard him seem pretty positive on literally everything he sees.
Yeah.
Seeing the best potential out of it. Overall, and that's why I think I would like want to rewatch this, is I'm not entirely sure what Bergman's actual opinion is at the end of this. If anything, I guess it's, I don't know. Like, it's just him wrestling with the same things, and then at the end being like, I guess still don't really know.
Yeah, I think so. I only have this insight from watching lots of Bergman films where he's dealt with this issue a lot. And I think, kind of playing off of what both of you are saying, I think Bergman is kind of a combination of Bloch, Jans, and Mia, where he is the tortured knight who is trying to find God. He's also the cynical squire who is, kind of just nihilistic and just laughing at other people who are trying to find this. And he's also, like, his solution to that is Mia's disposition of just finding joy in the people around you and the simple things in life. And like, that's the closest thing we can find to a profound existence, is just enjoying the people around us, and making and enjoying art are kind of like, throughout Bergman's films, the thing that he kind of comes back to as the closest thing we can get to anything transcendent are the people around us and exploring art with other people. And I think kind of like the thesis of the film, I think, is really Bloch's comment hanging out with Mia and eating strawberries. And he says, faith is a heavy burden, It's like loving someone out in the darkness who never comes, no matter how loud you call. How unreal all that seems sitting here with you and your husband, how insignificant all of a sudden, so it's like, there's these big, heavy questions, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to just keep sitting in them, and you just have to kind of live your life that's here in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a heavy pause there. I felt the weight of it. It does make more sense that like, there is not because there are four perspectives presented, that it not necessarily is that one of them is the odd one out, but that Yof would be kind of the upper bound.
Yof feels unrealistic to me.
Yeah.
Like, that is,
well,
like,
we saw him brutalized in a bar, and he didn't bat an eye.
But Yof is like, I think he's what Bergman wishes his experience with Christianity was, right? Where he could see something tangible and to have, like, feel like he was benefiting from it. But he failed to reach that. Yeah.
Man, I would have loved if Bergman had had like his own Buddhist awakening too. I'd love to know what Bergman thought about that shit. But yeah, there's just those, that bit for me, the end again, even though I kind of asserted like I'm inclined to believe what Yof believes, it's because I am inclined toward the more optimistic value that like, there's not necessarily that there's an afterlife or something out there where like we all get to live in the land of milk and honey. Like, it's not, that kind of thing.
Strawberries and honey.
Yeah. Strawberries and honey. That's really what it is. Strawberries and milk, Dixon.
Oh my God. Wow. You're right. I fucked up.
But that's, that there is beauty in death still, as opposed to fear in losing life. I suppose, is what I would choose to believe. And it sounds like Bergman came to that conclusion, albeit he's not like believing that they're dancing necessarily or that there is that much joy as Yov saw. But it is like interesting to see him lift somebody up beyond what he himself can grasp.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, Bergman talked about making this movie because of his fear of death and dealing with that. And it's not only his grappling with Christianity, but his intense fear of death at the time he was making this film. And, this came out in 1957. This is in the heat of the Cold War. And, there's all of this fear around nuclear holocaust that is going on. And, he sets the film, in the Crusades and the plague and all of this imminent death that is there. And it's like, it feels like a metaphor for the time that he's in, but it's also just such a timeless struggle. And every generation deals with their own, impending death that, is threatening to destroy the species or how it currently is, whether that's nuclear holocaust or global warming or AI or whatever it is that, we're worried is going to destroy us. Not that those fears are invalid, but, it makes it so this movie is always very prescient.
Yeah, if you spend too much time thinking on all that stuff and giving yourself anxiety, right? Versus just being in it.
Yeah. It is kind of wild how for a really long time, humanity kept conjuring things to end the world, and now we're genuinely building things to end the world. It's just fucking wild.
A-bombs and robots.
That's right.
Carbon gas.
Illusions, Michael. Well, anything else, Dixon, that you wanted to meditate on? I know you watched a shit ton of the special features for this.
I did. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of it. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see where Bergman goes from here. In a recent Recommend or Refute, I talked about Winter Light and in the broader context of the kind of spiritual trilogy of Through a Glass Darkly, A Winter Light, and The Silence. And, he would continue to come back to these ideas of faith and doubt. And it was clearly something that he struggled with throughout his life and, trying to find meaning and dealing with his upbringing and his childhood and, his dad being a very strict pastor and all of this that was something that he found interesting to continue to come back to over the course of his life. And it's interesting to me to see the first movie that he really aggressively delves into this, and he does it in such an incredible way that has just made such a lasting mark on society as a whole. I would encourage you, if you like The Seventh Seal, to watch Winter Light, to watch some of these other psychological and religious films that Bergman has made. John, you compared it to Hour of the Wolf. I think there's a lot of, a lot of Bergman's movies are psychological crises of the self, whether it's religious or artistic or, identity or whatever that may be. But yeah, I think he's just an incredible filmmaker that makes movies like nobody else does, that are such internal films about like battles of the soul that, film is a very external medium, like Paul Schrader says, it's a medium that benefits action, not introspection and transcendence. And I think Bergman has shown that, you can do that very effectively as well. It's difficult to pull off, but, if you are committed and skilled enough, you can make some pretty great art exploring those things.
Given that, you kind of answered a little bit of the question I was going to ask you, but where do people go from here? What is like the next Bergman film you would watch, or next film you feel is appropriate to watch?
I would actually say, so Bergman often would alternate between these psychological dramas and light comedies. And as he was making movies, I think he kind of had to bring some levity into his life to intersperse between these. Not always, he did Through Glass Darkly, The Winter Light, and The Silence all in a row. But I think one of his most fun movies is Smiles of a Summer Night, that I referenced earlier in the podcast, that is kind of his first breakout movie that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. And it is a hilarious sex comedy in which three couples like get together for the weekend at like somebody's like big palatial estate, and then they all end up switching partners by the end of the movie because they're all in like terrible relationships and end up with somebody else.
Amazing.
So I think that's a really fun movie to kind of see Bergman's more comedic side, which peeks its head out throughout the Seventh Seal, but it's overshadowed by these more psychological elements. But I think Smiles of a Summer Night is a fun movie to see, to kind of see Bergman's more commercial side, his more human side, and more lighthearted. So that's probably where I would recommend people go next. I mean, there's the other big movies that people know are like Persona and Cries and Whispers and Fanny and Alexander and like a lot of a lot of his later works. But I think Smiles of a Summer Night is a really cool entry point into Bergman. And if you've seen Seventh Seal and you want to see other things, it's kind of the other side of the coin.
Nice. Cool. I'm gonna have to check it out. I've only ever seen his psychological shit, so see a comedy from Bergman, please.
Yeah.
It's I was going to ask. I definitely want to see something different.
Yeah.
It's actually, I have in the Criterion Bergman box set. It's the first movie in it, and I think it's a really good way to just start you out. It's like, hey, this is a really nice, just like generally delightful film that doesn't make you think too hard. It's not plunging you into the deep end, and then you kind of move out further from there.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So Ryan, would you recommend this movie?
I definitely liked it better than Hour of the Wolf. I do really feel like I needed, that second view on it. I think the difference, the questions and how kind of like the quietness and like the dialogue, the cinematography kind of leave these like images in your mind to think about on top of the like dialogue, right? And kind of like package it together. I think definitely leaves an impression, and I feel like on multiple watches, I'm going to appreciate it like more and more. So I do recommend it. It totally is that like recommending it to someone to be like, hey, are you wanting to go like meditate on some things? Here's a good entry point. But if you're just like, hey, here's a movie to go watch, it could totally catch people like off guard. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, like how you come at it is going to be important.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely something you need to be like actively wanting to engage in those types of questions when you go into it. But it's not a homework movie. It's not a slog to watch. Like I think it is entertaining, and there's a lot of fun stuff in it. Like I think Jans is hilarious, and Gunnar Bjornstern is so good in that role as the cynical squire. There's a lot of jokes cracking and just stuff that's more fun and lighthearted throughout the film. And he kind of alternates between these somber sequences and these more comedic, lighthearted scenes. John, would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I would recommend this movie. It has the amount of like fever dream visuals that I really enjoy. They are haunting. They're memorable. It's a great experience because it's something that like, even if you go into it and you like, it's one of those things where, to Ryan's point, like, I don't know, it's one of those things I hesitate to recommend it to somebody who just watched like a James Cameron film, but I might still be like, you know what, you want to see something totally different? Check this out. It has those different meditations, and even if you're not religious, or especially if you are, it's like a great meditation film to be like, well, okay, like in between the jokes and kind of the haunting imagery, there are these things that you'll continue to think on. I feel like if anybody came back to me and was mad at me for recommending it, they would probably slowly tell me as they were mad, like, yeah, you made me watch this movie that had all these things, like what was that death shit about? And I would be like, it was this. And they'd be like, well, yeah, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. And like, it just would piece together a dialogue and a discussion. I feel like there's no way around it when you watch this kind of movie. So I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I would obviously recommend this movie. I brought it to the group. I've seen it before. I'm a huge Bergman fan. But I think it's, kind of in context of my recommendation, I think it's interesting to look at kind of how the film has been viewed over the years. And like when it first came out, it was really beloved by art house cinephiles, and it became in vogue over time to kind of shit on the Seventh Seal and to say that maybe this isn't one of Bergman's better films, and it became known as like smart people like this movie, and it's like a a homework thing, but it's not like an enjoyable experience. And I think a lot of that is because it's been parodied so much, and people watch something that they have seen done in a more extreme way and they want to laugh at it because they've seen kind of a mocking version of it. But I think if you just extricate the movie from all of its context and everything that you've ever heard about it, it's a fascinating film. It is beautifully done, and it's a good experience that will make you think, but also make you laugh. And it's a good movie. It's an entertaining movie. But Bergman was very committed to making sure that all his films were entertaining, not like boring art house films that you felt like you had to eat your vegetables and sit through to actually get through it. Like, he wanted to be entertaining in his films, and I think that comes through in The Seventh Seal and in his other works as well. So would highly recommend anybody to check it out. Cool. All right. That's going to bring us to a close. Thank you so much for listening to us this evening. I have been your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always,
Ryan King. I figured it out. We're going to play Monopoly, and I'm going to drag it out as long as possible. Fuck it. I've had enough, right?
Risk.
That's what always happens at the end of Monopoly.
Yeah. What's that one? Oh, Ryan, you got to play that board game. Is it the campaign for Africa? The one that takes 1,500 hours or whatever the fuck
forever
it is?
to play. Yeah.
And Death has to leave and go kill people, so he can't actually be dedicated to it for a solid 1,500 hours. So it's going to take much longer than that.
He's going to always forget where he was.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And
John Garcia, we're obligated to mention, if you think that this movie is snooty and you're like, hey, what did this even influence? Why don't you go watch Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure?
Bogus Journey.
And fucking come back, okay? Just go watch that and then watch this. It's fine. We wouldn't have that without this. Damn it.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for putting up with our bullshit.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.